T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
I hear her with some TMI right now. That's on her face. Shout out to the big body high priestess, by the way. One of the best intuitive readers out here. I said what I said, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another
episode of Maury. Apparently, you are the father.
Be careful, fellas. Yeah, I will give you the advice, the only advice my father gave me. My father never taught me how to date or pick up chicks or court. He only told me, if you have sex, wear a condom.
Wrap it up, dog. Wrap it up.
Even if they say it's cool not to. And in experience, I've learned it's true.
What a true Nigerian prince.
Sun and Aries, too. He has Moon and Virgo on Pluto. How was it? Your favorite Nigerian prince. You can give me your credit card number. You can email that to me. You don't have to let me email you. You can email me your
deets.
Bank details, your deets. It's for a good cause. It's like Umar, I'm gonna build a school.
It's like such a theme right now with the
shout out to Doc Umar,
with the Mars-Uranus conjunction and the Saturn squares and all like the leaks and the hacks and the things that are kind of going on in the digital world.
I didn't know it was raining that bad in Vegas.
Did you see all the, I sent you one of the videos, right? Where it was like playing the music and like all the parking structures were flooding.
It looked like the end of the world. Holy crap.
Well, I guess there's no real like sewage here. There's no. like drains and stuff. Like you don't see any of that.
In some casinos, that's crazy.
Well, some of the people that were just like still like smoking and playing slots, and there's just like water coming from the ceiling.
Fucking Vegas.
It's kind of hilarious to me. Well, guys, this is like a timely video given what's going on in the world with the tensions that are going on over in Asia between China and Taiwan and all that other stuff. So we were like, let's look at the charts.
By the time you see this, we're probably going to be at war. So just so you know.
Although, hold up. One of the videos that we recently put out, the full moon in Aquarius, we said, and we filmed that like several weeks ago, we were like, if you don't think we're at war, you're high. And then it came out and everybody's like, oh shit, look at what's happening.
I don't know if you know, Hades doesn't miss. Like, she just, I think
we both said that, though. I think we both said it.
We're kind of defeated. Yeah.
It's just not something that's becoming visible until we start seeing these, like, Mars squares in an Earth sign that it's actually going down. It's not just, like, on the airwaves or in the air.
Countries are preparing for war, literally.
Well, land grabs, right? I could see, like, Mars, Uranus, square Saturn is, like, land grabs. So, I mean, they've been talking about this since, like, the early 2000s that China was going to pull the shit with Taiwan. So I figured, like, let's pull China's chart. Like, let's look at, I can't even pronounce his name. I already asked you, like, 5 times. Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
I keep calling him
He's a Gemini,
JPEG.
I know that. He was born in...
I keep calling him JPEG. Sounds like one of, like, Elon Musk's kids, you know?
Oh, my God. X4-62.
So we're going to look at his chart. We can look at Biden's. We're also going to look at the U.S. chart. I have Taiwan's chart, and I just thought it'd be interesting just to kind of take a look at what's going on here and like maybe putting some pieces together and trying to figure out like what the fuck is going on in the world.
I don't know if you said land grabs. I don't know if it's Uganda, but a country in Africa has found massive gold. And I mean, I was thinking about the Uranus and Taurus, and that could be a potential.
I mean, at least it's happening to a part of the world that isn't like, you know, like doing very well. Like I feel like if natural resources are going to be found, I'm hoping it's going to be in some of these like third world countries where at least it could bring more resources back to the country. Just given some of the stuff that's going on, you know. Very interested also just over this last week, just kind of hearing more about how like China and Russia are teaming up to like make this new currency, which is going to be backed by actual materials, like precious materials, not just gold, but like other materials. So I found that kind of fascinating also. So let's jump right into it. Let's look at China's chart. And let's put up, so for China, I just pulled this all off of the Astro Data Bank. So October 1st, 1949, I think that's for the New Republic of China or whatever.
1949. So that means it's not even 100 years old. That's deep.
No, and so here's what's kind of cool that's going on right now is that in my mind, like these super conjunctions that were taking place in 2020 with like Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, it was all hovering on their composite. I mean, on the country's Jupiter in the 12th. So I see that as like something was brewing globally that was starting up kind of behind the scenes that was intentionally going to be about bringing like a new world order, Capricorn. And it was all in a square to their nodes.
It's 1 degree Aqua rising?
Yeah, so over the next several years, but really it starts like next spring, we're going to see Pluto go into Aquarius. It's going to conjunct Pluto, their ascendant, and it's also going to be in conjunction to the moon, which is, the ruler of the 6th house, which deals with like workers and health and stuff. So this is a chart that's just like really lit up right now between that and also the Mars-Uranus.
This makes so much sense.
In opposition to Venus, and that there's literally like a new land possession, North Node Uranus Mars in opposition to Venus, which is
exactly 19 degrees.
Yeah, but another country that may have like resources or materials. That's
probably hidden. It's probably not like being It's probably not being reported or told. I could totally see that. As far as it being left underground and
also just Venus being in Scorpio, something that's from the underground, something that's
I didn't even realize Pluto going over the rising to me and moon looks like they're either going to become like the next world superpower with Russia or they could be destroyed. Like that's
I think they're gearing up to ensure that they are making sure that there is going to be work coming out of this country, just given the fact that the moon rules the 6th, which is workers, health, and the moon is in Aquarius, which is like this more kind of futuristic, future thinking. I'm like wondering like...
And Uranus is in Cancer. That's an interesting like reversal.
Well, what about the fact that Saturn has been in opposition to Pluto and Mars? So like China's had to deal with some adversaries. I mean, to some extent, that's still kind of happening right now. I mean, as we're filming this, it's the 3rd of August, so we don't really know what's going to happen. Like, Pelosi got there, now she's leaving. I think she's going to Korea right now. But just kind of looking at this, I mean, I wonder, like, are they doing this to ensure that there is still going to be a lot of business going out of China? Pluto going into Aquarius, conjuncting that moon, makes me feel like there's some type of like real emphasis on the future of like future in like tech, maybe streaming from this country because it's Aquarius. And they haven't had that Pluto transit yet. And Saturn went back and forth over that ascendant in 2020, which is when we saw all of those really extreme off and on lockdowns and people being very limited and lots of issues with like control over health. So that is not a good indication of some of the stuff that's actually coming. Like, I know I sound probably crazy saying this, but I'm like, to me, this looks like some kind of like digital enslavement, ensuring that everybody's either health or wellness or something relating to like records is like actually being spied upon. I mean,
I'm dumbfounded by the Libra stellium. I didn't know they had Neptune on the South Node, on freaking Mercury on the sun. So this is a country that its sun is in its fall, but we have Jupiter that's been touring opposite it. So China is getting ready for like a brand new resurgence. I think like relative to where it got founded, right? Like Jupiter on the North Node and then Saturn is going to Neptune in the 2nd and all that first house. Like it's a remake over.
Yeah, but I mean, you're also watching, Chiron hover around their North Node in the 2nd, and it's making oppositions to their Neptune and their South Node, which is really bringing up the fact that like they're in a fucking shitload of debt. To the point where it's just like it almost makes sense that they're trying to like wipe everything and start over, because as it stands now, they either are in so much debt or they owe so much money to other people, 8th house Libra, that it's like, why not create your own thing, right? And so I think that it's also just very telling watching like Saturn and Aquarius in the 1st house square with Venus. Like you've got thousands, if not millions of people who are supposedly not paying their mortgages are not paying their loans on land that's being developed because the whole real estate and architectural thing is like going under in China because there's a bunch of projects that aren't being delivered upon, they're not being developed, there's a lack of funds and materials, and so you got a bunch of people that are like, we're not paying our mortgage, and like the banks they're not doing so hot. Yeah, that's some shit. I'm particularly curious to see what happens when Mars reactivates that eclipse point that we had, both from the fall of 2020 and 2021, and also at the beginning of May. So when Mars comes into that conjunction with that degree, and that's going to be around the 14th, and then it begins to, start fully coming out of the square with the other fixed placements, I think we're going to see some real stuff kind of kick off in August. Also, we're going to see like a Mars retrograde that's going to be taking place technically from the 5th to the 4th. So that also makes me feel like there's some reworking of some like new land that they have acquired or something in regards to business. And yeah, that's some stuff.
It's a ticking time bomb. I mean,
well, and then they're gonna have a Mercury retrograde in their 8th, so we're gonna start to see like what's actually going on with money and funding, and if there's some kind of collaboration with another country. So I'm wondering like, oh, Putin has all that Libra in his 12th house, and it's like sitting all along that 8th house stellium. Then we're gonna have eclipses that are gonna be happening at the end of October.
And then Jupiter opposite their sun could be that alliance they're making currently, which falls in their 2nd.
So look at this eclipse.
Which is going to help their economy.
An eclipse with their Venus return. Okay, and you've got Venus that's kind of like what in detriment here. And then we've got lunar eclipse conjunct Uranus square. So to me, this is kind of suggesting like this is when things really pop off.
Oh yeah.
When we see that, because whole sign it's going to be in the 4th.
Climax or pop off?
Perhaps. I mean, I think that's the popping off, but I think that the climax is going to be when the nodes move to square Pluto on the ascendant.
Oh shit!
And that's going to be more so like spring through summer of next year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the north and the south node are going to square the moon. Moon rules the 6th house, and then you've got Mars going into the 6th house. So something about control in regards to health and resources. Like I've thought for some time, like China, Australia, like Canada, like a lot of these places are the testing grounds for the New World Order. Like they're doing it in these places because these are some of the places where you're going to have people who are going to be the most compliant, and also where there's going to be definitely like an already like taking away people's rights. Like that shit wouldn't fly here in the United States.
And the resistance that happens in those places, they don't broadcast. So they won't show you the non-compliant people, and the alliance they have with Russia that you were saying, or that you showed me, that mentioned they're basing their currency off minerals. To me sounds like South Node on Venus, and then basing that in the Jupiter North Node in the 2nd to be a new cycle to step them into wealth.
There's incentive for that,
cool.
right? I mean, it's like, you know, a lot of people are talking about these environmental things and like saving the planet and like the new Green Deal and all this stuff. And like, I'm not against protecting the planet. Like, I'm very aware of that stuff. But I also know that some of the stuff that they're talking about doing is not as environmentally friendly as they're making it sound. The amount of like digging and excavation and needing to go and actually find minerals like copper and other things that are going to be needed to make some of these like new chips, and also anything in regards to making the technology and like developing like the batteries and stuff for like some of these electric vehicles, like they're not as environmentally friendly as people think. So there is going to still be this incentive to like go and like dig this stuff up and find countries that are going to have the material so we can be able to produce this stuff. And I think that you see the same thing with turbines and anything in relation to like making energy from air. What are those things called? You know what I'm talking about? So some of those are like not
the fan generators.
Yeah, like
the windmills.
The windmills, yeah.
Okay.
So some of the new ones that they're developing, and also like some of the stuff for like solar, Like it's actually like really bad for the environment. Like it's not recyclable. So we're developing things that are ultimately not going to be good for the environment. So like part of me doesn't understand where this incentive comes from other than to be able to shift the focus. And now we're going to see, at least locally in the United States, lots more legislation and things that are being pushed through that's like, oh, it's good for the environment and it's going to cut inflation, but like there's no printing money to pay for these new programs, inflation is going to go up. So I think that like bringing it back to China is that some of the countries that are going to have some of the materials that we're needing for some of this stuff is definitely, it's going to make sense to be able to kind of like monopolize and actually have possession and control of some of these parts of the world because it's going to be very lucrative.
Nice.
Let's look at Xi Jinping?
Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just going to call him Xi. What is Xi for 1,000? We don't know the actual time that he was born. I just know June 15th, 1953, so I did an Aries rising chart. Just to kind of see what's going on with him. I mean, look at that north node at 3, right?
Where the moon is. So he was destined to be the supreme ruler of China. That's
so
amazing.
We flip this around.
That's deep.
His north node's on the moon. So it's like a driving force for some of this stuff. And one thing I've noticed that's really interesting, and we've seen this with like Putin, we're seeing this with him, those really heavy like Pluto, Leo energies. Yeah. I think that also we see that for Zelensky. I think he's got something else in like Leo too that's also been kind of getting pinged. Real strong like ego stuff, but looking just at his chart.
He has Jupiter and Sun in Gemini.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to like tie this all together. Do you see where I'm going with this? So we'll talk about his chart and I'll come back to it. But he has something to do with the Mars retrograde.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. That's genius.
So we don't know his time. We know that there's eclipses that have been relatively close to his Venus in an Earth sign. So that obviously is going to like incentivize him to want to focus more on like natural resources and money and like stability. We know that he's got a South Node moon in Leo and
and Pluto. So it's not the same, not close, but
and Saturn's in opposition to his Pluto, you know? So just looking at that, Pluto is second house to his sun, so it can be about possessions. 5th house, we don't know his ascendant, but that being in the 5th house and in opposition to Saturn, it's like his own personal will and need for domination or maybe even like leadership versus like outside collective forces with that Saturn in Aquarius. So I could see that that's like other, you know, politicians, other world leaders, other people that are like, hey, you have to like play nice, and he's not doing it.
Is his rising Aries or you just
we don't know. Okay, I just did a 0 degrees Aries rising.
Cool. I just feel like there's so much beneath the surface that is carefully being hidden that maybe the Mars retrograde can start to surface.
What do you think about the fact that Saturn is going to basically, I mean, it's going to oppose his Pluto again?
Yeah. And then it's part of that T-square, so
you know
that's nuclear to me.
To me, this seems pretty fucking heavy. The fact that there's going to be a full moon in opposition to his Pluto.
Oh, you're right. That sounds like an activation right there, or a release, or a trigger. Even if at least over the next week and a half, that's very significant. I do agree, and it's opposite his moon too, and it aspects his node. So, if anything, this is all slowly but surely building up to something key, and the moon is right now going through his Neptune and Saturn.
Yeah.
So that should give us some insight. But and then if we look at the Saturn trine to his Saturn, that's definitely strengthening a lot of the exalted karmic power that he'll not only be able to kind of enforce, but I don't know why, to me, with the influence of Neptune, that looks like bridging either propaganda or fighting against propaganda against them. So, really, yeah, that full moon will just serve to almost like unlayer what's being built like an onion. And with that revelation, it'd be interesting to see how that manifest in Virgo season.
I mean, I'm very curious just to see Mars square his Pluto here,
Oh, yeah,
and
that
then to watch the moon. So
in Scorpio, it's
August
going to be
5th.
like a square.
So by the time you guys are seeing
across.
this, it's already happening.
Wow.
But that is pretty triggering. The Mars square Pluto squared by the moon, and then Saturn.
Yeah,
So
that's
August 5th looks like an action-oriented kind of crisis-related day. And then I'm really looking at this full moon, which will conjunct Saturn and it'll oppose his Pluto. And so that seems to be like a...
What do you think about assassination attempts that aren't broadcasted?
I mean, I will say that if I am correct on this, his sun is conjunct the Pleiades, which deals with the weeping sisters and like blindness and something relating
So
to...
it's in Gemini, not Taurus?
No, it starts at the end. I think it starts, I want to say like 20 to 25 of Gemini, I think. But Mars will go retrograde through there. So, I mean, it could deal with literal vision or just his vision being like reworked in some capacity. I mean, it's kind of hard because I feel like his moon in Leo is... I mean, that he's carrying something karmically relating to like having some sense of like leadership. And with that South Node moon in Leo, it's like learning not to necessarily do what's best for him, learning to do what's best for the collective. So as Pluto comes into conjunction with his North Node and also China's ascendant, it's going to be like change that's really difficult because it kind of goes against like his astrological makeup. But yeah, I mean, this is gonna be a chart to watch, especially watching the North Node come into conjunction to his Venus, which is going to be 12th to his Sun, and the dispositor of this, you know, is Venus because it's a Venus-related sign and it squares the node. So this to me seems like perhaps maybe his plan and a way to be able to potentially salvage his resources or that of his countries is having something that's going to give him some kind of like bargaining, like materials that might give him the ability to bargain. Maybe we're going to see that at the end of October, and then as the North Node comes into conjunction with this, and then, you know, Jupiter's going to go there. So I think that they're going to have something that's like very valuable in terms of resources in 2023 that the rest of the world is going to want. And he's almost like setting himself up now to be able to be in that position.
What do you think about the opposition to his moon and node?
That's going to take some time. I mean, you're going to see his nodal square first, which is taking place in the spring.
That's deep.
And for a Gemini, you know, the 8th house is actually Capricorn, so he'd need to have a pretty bad Saturn transit to take him out. And Saturn's already in opposition to his Pluto, so it's like he's already kind of in that area now. I don't think anything's going to happen to him, though. We would need to maybe see something more significant maybe happen to, like, I would say his Mars, or maybe we can't base this off of his ascendant because we don't know. But, yeah, it's going to take some time. And it'll be interesting to watch, like, how the changes that China goes through. Is it because he's bringing it on, or is it something that he actually doesn't align with, and it's actually more so associated with, like, big tech?
Yeah.
You know? Let's look at Taiwan. So for Taiwan, we have an Aries rising, sun in Cancer, 8 degrees, really close to JPEG's Mars.
It's about to have a Saturn return. So I feel like before the Saturn return, or by the time Jupiter next year goes to the first, it's being invaded.
I don't even think it's going to take that long. I think it's going to be a lot sooner than we think. I think that this might be something that either happens in the month of August, or it's happening closer to October going into November.
Could you imagine a full-scale invasion into Taiwan? That would be crazy.
Well, if you look at the country's chart as a whole, that Saturn moon ascendant is tying together the land, physical land, 4th house, the roots, the past, and something in relation, because that Saturn is also in Aries, so it's, you know, not functioning as well, and it rules the 10th house. So the land is literally going to be determined, or the roots or the people, based off of what specific either armies or generals or governments come in and basically say, this is ours, we're taking possession of that. So that's interesting.
I mean, it's super interesting. I like the yod too, but I really love that. I like that. I like that you feel it's going to happen before, because we see Jupiter retrograding. But as everyone, or if in case you're not familiar, it's very significant to see Jupiter go through the AC of a chart, because that's like its new first chapter. It's like a facelift. So if the retrograde back into Pisces will bring the invasion, and then by the time it goes direct, maybe it's finished being invaded, and Jupiter starts its first house with new rulers.
Jupiter's also going to retrograde in conjunction to Chiron. And that's telling me that there could almost be like prisoners of war. It's at 29 degrees.
All that 12th house, prison energy.
Yeah, and it's conjunct sheet. So it's going to have something to do with like storms and drownings and suicide and people who go missing. And I think we're going to hear a lot about refugees that are coming out of Taiwan.
What do you feel about the Chiron conjunction with Jupiter?
Yeah, I mean, Jupiter's going to amplify that. I think it's going to definitely spark some stuff globally about rights pertaining to, citizens globally. I mean, and whether or not...
What if it's all hidden, though?
It will be. We're not going to hear a lot about it.
Okay. So it's probably like clips that come out that weren't supposed to come out.
I think so. And Chiron's conjunct Saturn, and Chiron's on the ascendant, so... It's almost like either the government or the actual military is weak right now, or it should be pretty weak, according to this, and not really able to kind of like hold it all together and protect.
It's a Scorpio sun at that, so it's being affected by the eclipse. And it was born, so it's having a nodal return. It's about to have a Saturn return.
Yeah, and Saturn's in opposition to their Venus.
Yeah.
So that's also saying like there's certain people who are backing down. So just kind of going back to just what I saw in the news this week. I mean, literally, it was like, I don't know who it was, but it was somebody in the White House staff making a press release being like, we don't believe that Taiwan should be independent. And then you see Nancy Pelosi flying over there being like, we support Taiwan.
And she said that after they put that statement out?
I think she said it before.
Oh, before.
Yeah. And then you also see like all this stuff about how there was like a bunch of shit sold to Taiwan for war. America makes money basically off of funding this shit. Like, they stir the pot.
America stole it to Taiwan?
Yeah.
That's what got them in the First World War, because they're like, oh, you don't want to be in the war, but you're stirring the pot. And, you know what I'm saying? So
I think there's something to be said about the fact that, like, China doesn't... I really don't think China wants to do anything right now.
Right.
You know? This is something my husband was saying. He's like, yeah, they're not going to want to do that while she's there.
While she's there. That's
which makes sense, because they don't want shit with America. But by the same token, like, they were talking a lot of shit before Nancy left.
Really?
Yeah, they were, like, saying stuff like, oh, you know, like... I don't know. There was something they put on, like, a major, like, social media app that they were like, oh... like, anything that's done against this is going to be met with, like, a fierce or fiery something. I don't know. We'll get the clip of it.
Oh, those who play with fire will be burned or something. Yeah. Oh, okay, I thought you meant before she left Taiwan. But
no, before she left for Taiwan.
Yeah, they were talking shit. Yeah, that was interesting.
I mean, I think, you know...
That's funny.
Saturn's in a trine to Mars, so I do see, like, support that can come from other governing bodies, but also Saturn's in opposition to Venus, so it's going to be things like... they're going to want support from allies unless allies are being leaned on by other countries, i.e. America has pretty much come forward and been like, no, we're not supporting this.
We don't want smoke.
We don't want any issues because it's going to cause problems with China, but we'll send billions of dollars. It's now become billions of dollars to Ukraine. They just passed another large
Ukraine
amount.
Money's going to go to Taiwan or something like that?
No, it's just they're not wanting to get involved with Taiwan, but they're sending money to Ukraine, and we still don't know what the fuck is going on in Ukraine. Yeah. So just the whole thing sounds like a money laundering scam. Call me a conspiracy theorist.
I believe the same thing. Yeah, covering up deals done.
Or they're just printing money because they know that the whole thing is going to blow, and they might as well get as much money out as they can and get it into wherever the next major world power is. I mean, was it you that was telling me that you had a theory that was Biden's job?
Yeah, I have a theory that him being the 12th house Scorpio, ruled by Pluto, while Pluto's having its return, his job is to sabotage America and to destabilize it as much as he can. So whoever he's in bed with, I kind of see it like he's trying to lower the value of it so that they can come through and buy it while it's at a lower value instead of getting it while it's high. That's kind of how I see it. But that's more speculation because there's details that we don't have. But I'm pretty sure most people can see through and read between the lines.
Okay, let's look at Nancy.
Nancy. Summer.
28 degrees, Leo rising, 26 degrees, Mars. That's where the eclipse was. Wow.
She's an Aries sun. I didn't even think about that.
The fact that there's going to be a reactivation with that eclipse on her Mars, and also she's having her Uranus return in conjunction to her Venus.
She is having
I think a lot of that's also just the shit that came out about like whether or not her husband had anything to do with like inside trader information in regards to buying Nvidia.
Yeah, she's on hot fire for that. But I mean, she literally is right, like that's
it's right there. Wow. But also the south node's on her moon at 18 degrees, ruler of the 12th, and she's currently in another country. Part of me looks at this and goes, oh my God, is something going to happen to like an aircraft? You know, I don't wish for that. I have to say that, but you know, but the Saturn square, you've got Uranus and Mars in the 9th house coming into an opposition with her moon. I mean,
it's setting her up for a debut. She's clearly a lead role character as a Leo rising, so it coming through the first will kind of debut her stance and everything. But what's really interesting to me is the moon's on the eclipse too. I didn't think about that, but I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that this is more setting off a domino effect. So even if things don't happen exactly now, I can't help but think that her involvement did set off a domino chain of events. Because I mean, that has to be significant for something. Like,
well, just in her moon, which is like about backroom deals in
True.
Opposition to Uranus and Venus and Mars, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, is this Uranus transit just going to break everything out? I mean, they have astrologers. Like, we've saw it with, like, the Reagans. I know they have it in parts of Europe. And, like, also with, like, we have Indian astrologers for, like, people out there. Like, lots of well-known politicians and people in government, they use astrology. They may never admit to it, but they do. So I look at this and I'm like, who the fuck told Nancy Pelosi to go in the midst of these transits?
Someone did.
Because it's not safe. Like, anywhere that she is, it's not safe. And weren't they saying she was going to go somewhere else? She's supposed to go to Korea, and then she's going somewhere else. And, like, this is not safe in her chart.
It'd be highly probable that someone did tell her not to go, but the Aries in her was like, fuck it, I'm going to go anyway. I like, she's inverse or something, but I didn't even realize that. But, like, that's a very Aries response, like, well, I'm going to go anyway. And
at least I actively tell people I'm a villain.
Yes!
That's the difference between Scorpio Sun, Aries Moon, and Aries Sun, Scorpio Moon. I mean, at least I'm like, yeah, I'm a villain. That's kind of fucked, though, when you see that. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is a badass, though. Like, some of the stuff that she has done, I'll give her credit for speaking up against.
That's the Aries right there.
You know, people who want to, you know, like, put women down. I don't really agree with a lot of her policies personally, and I think a lot of it's bullshit. She's just another one of those politicians on the Hill that's, you know, basically a multi-millionaire, making a ton of money, lives in San Francisco, isn't really connected to the reality of what many Americans are faced. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, looking at also in a chart like this, just watching, I'm very curious to see what happens with this Mars return of hers, because it's going to reactivate something here. Right around August 13th.
Yeah.
And I think that she's somebody to watch.
For sure.
From that full moon here to about here. I mean, I think Nancy going there, it makes me wonder. I think it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. Like, she's going there just to make it seem like, okay, we're cool, everything's good, right? But as soon as she leaves, I feel like a lot of things are inevitably going to happen anyway.
That's actually a really great point. It's after she leaves, we want to see what happens. And we also want to keep in mind that I think the North Node eventually in Aries on her South Node, should she still be here, would probably also be triggering. Like the North Node is going to tour all her Aries. So this is all setting her up really for maybe an ascension, maybe a higher position.
Is it? Or, well, yeah. I think this is going to be about her trying to get a higher position in general. Just knowing that, you know, the eclipses are coming in Aries next year. She's going to have one conjunct her Saturn.
Nancy Pelosi, Drake, Donald Trump, all have the Regulus 28, 29 degree Leo rising. So this is even more reason to keep an eye on these people because they're all literally major players, main characters, lead role characters. Like, it makes so much more sense now seeing her rising here.
Well, and with Uranus going back and forth over her midheaven, if she doesn't stay in politics, she's going to go into something that's going to be about tech and big business and funding if she doesn't stay. She's also coming up to her Pluto opposition. So I kind of speculate that staffers might come up and out her for some stuff that she's been doing in the beginning of 2024. Yeah.
Staffers, like people working with her?
Yeah, because it's in her 6th house.
That's
people
so
who worked for her or worked with her.
Yeah.
Let's look at your favorite Biden.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Scorpio Jesus.
You know, that Mars transit, not great for his chart because you've got that 26-27 of Taurus is Algol, and then on the opposite end of that, it is, what is 26-27 of Scorpio? That is, what is it? This Scorpion's heart. It's, what is it called? There's a name for it. It'll come to me.
Antares?
Antares, yeah.
Okay.
So when we see Mars come into the opposition...
It's Scorpio? I thought it was Sag.
It's like the last couple degrees of Scorpio. I think it's early Sag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's within the same, within the same orb. But when Mars comes to oppose that here, this is a time to watch Biden. August 14th, 15th, 16th.
He's a mystery. I'm gonna be honest. That 12th house, like I even feel, I'm almost convinced, like the senile, like old man look. I think a part of it is an act. Like I don't think he's as senile as he comes off. I think he is, but he's not entirely. And
I think it's interesting that they were making comments about how he says he has intentions of running for 2024. And now people are like, why hasn't he like put in his bid yet? Like, why hasn't he done this or that? And they're like, oh no, he's intending on running. Like in the back of their mind, it's almost like they're delaying talking about it because they either don't think he's gonna make it or perhaps maybe like people know that there's like such a big change coming with government here pretty soon that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, true. That's interesting.
Am I the only one that's like freaked out by the fact that when you hear like, you know, Justin from Canada, you hear the Prime Minister from the UK, you hear people from Germany, Australia, they're all reading like that same creepy script where they're all saying, oh, it's about Build Back Better and doing this to like promote, you know, like equality and like new healthy living. And like to me, it sounds like a whole fucking scheme just to turn this all into like one world communist government. But all of the major leaders are saying this. So it's almost like they're being handed a script and being told like what to say. So there's somebody else that's doing things behind closed doors. So when I look
Candace just masterfully explained what Saturn in Aquarius is because they're reading the script. Everything's going to change Saturn in Pisces. And in that one world of Saturn Aries moving forward, which is like we're getting ready to see everything
too.
With Neptune. Oh, yes. To me, that's like the curtain dropping. And then everyone sees, oh shit, we got played. Versus people who already know now that are actually taking action. Whether you and there are people who know now who disagree with each other on stuff, but they're doing stuff in their own way. Versus people who are just clueless. Conspiracy theorists versus people who don't believe in conspiracies who are clueless, and then conspiracy theorists versus people who don't believe in conspiracies who are doing the work. So it's really setting up for this whole thing where people realize we're not against each other. Like we're arguing, like we might have differences, but it's something that's happening to everyone. And I really believe that Saturn in Pisces is where everything's going to start happening. That started 2020 with Saturn in Capricorn, and everything that people have been predicting would happen, it's all going to happen.
Especially as Saturn gets closer and closer to Neptune. Because Saturn being at the close degrees of Neptune, we're going to see a future for a couple years where there's going to be more lockdowns. It's going to be normal, but I think it's going to be locked down and locked into a screen where everything that's been going on for the last couple of years, it was like a setup basically to like kill off all the old people, get rid of all like the consumers and the people who work in fast food and the people who work in the service industry or people who, you know, work in food, whatever,
plot.
To be able to start clearing house and making space, and also older people who won't adapt well to some of these technological changes, knowing that the businesses can have more control, make more money, by having people work at home in their own living space and being tuned into a computer where everybody is going to start doing something more so like digitally online.
Yeah.
So it's just...
Do you feel Saturn reaching Neptune is like killing the veil and instituting a new veil?
Well, it's entering into Aries, so automatically that Saturn, being in a debilitated state, I think is not easy. Neptune as well, when you think about it, Neptune being in Aries because it traditionally is ruled in Pisces. So if you see, I guess you could say Libra, but I have this, I keep going back and forth, like thinking about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction just in general. And for me, it's really come down to like, what is the difference between like being devoted to something versus feeling like you have to be like expected to do something, so like that Saturn kind of like is about getting it right and showing up and getting the job done and like being like, what is the word that I'm looking for, it's just the difference between being told to get the job done and doing like devotional work. So I think that as Saturn and Neptune come together in Aries, it's basically going to be telling a lot of people like, minimalism, we make sacrifices because that's what we have to do. Everybody has to make sacrifices. Everybody has to be alone. Perhaps maybe, I think the silver lining is we're going to go back to like worshiping gods and goddesses and deities again. And we learn more about like myth and like, personal stories rather than just subscribing to like religion. I think a lot of people are going to go back to their own personal rituals and they're going to start like maybe worshiping, their own belief systems.
Like taking it away from a group theory and more individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think we're going to see less about organized religion, more about like saints and gods and all kinds of other deities and stuff that's more connected to like what is natural and like nature.
What do you feel about new, like that concept you said, but instead of people worshiping old gods, they start to worship new gods? They start to worship new concepts.
It's a new cycle, so
Right.
anything is possible.
True.
Especially when you look at it, being in the sign of Aries. I think it's going to be, we're going to realize that we are God. Not demigods, not anything like we. It's like a particle. Maybe we'll hear more about the God particle.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
I love that. That would make sense, like a whole new cycle of really and that would mean that the Pisces chapter is revealing all this final conclusion of awareness, and then we move forward with that. So
I want to show you something. So obviously, Biden's one to watch this mid-August time because we're going to have the oppositions, which are also going to be squared by the sun. So it is going to talk something about a disagreement or some health issues or weakening and some conflict and challenges with like a foreign land, right? So maybe that's why Pelosi's going, and we're going to see a lot more going on where like a lot of other people are taking care of things other than Biden. He got COVID recently, then he came back, then he tested positive again, and then he's been like down again. So like his health's not doing well with some of these eclipses. But what I'm really looking at is a reoccurring theme for what's going to happen for the United States and Biden. And then we can throw Jinping or whatever his name is in there as well. So Mars is going to go retrograde in Gemini, right? So it's going to go retrograde in the 7th house, both for Biden as well as the United States. So what do you make of that in terms of reworking contractual agreements in terms of allies? So allies are being reworked in the 7th house, right? So I look at that and I go, 7th house could also be adversaries or
open enemies,
enemies. So who's going to come and start shit during that Mars retrograde? I think it's going to be
we're going to be at war.
I think it's going to be China's prime minister. I think we're also going to hear a lot more from Trump.
Yeah, when you were talking about Xi Jinping, I was thinking we should watch out for Trump too for the Mars retrograde.
So if we throw him in there, because he's in the 7th house.
And that will also
See like the corresponding like Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn, right? Like there's going to be some shit that's going to go on here. Putting him on the outside.
I think, and this is a prediction, I could be wrong, but because I still think we're in war right now, right? But Mars in the 7th house, we may actually be at war. So this could be like the open official declaration of it done by the president. And I mean, it does seem that China might be involved if we have like his plans there. But I love that you said Trump, because I think Trump.
They're gonna paint Trump as being somebody who's gonna be.
They're gonna try and do something to him. That's a fact. I mean, he's a threat. Like 2023 means that he's going to start running for 2024. So we're gonna hear a lot from him coming very soon. And I love that you brought Mars. Mars and Gemini is gonna really activate that. And you know, both of them have Uranus in Gemini. They're getting ready for Uranus return.
But look at how Xi Jinping's moon and his south node sit on the United States north node and Joe Biden's Pluto. It's almost like, and maybe this is me going out on a limb here, but it's almost like China sitting around waiting and being like, yeah, you know, or the Chinese prime minister being like, yeah, like, when stuff goes to shit financially and all these things, and like he starts to see weak spots, like that gives him this like okay motion to move in. And then we've also got his Mars conjunct America's Venus, ruler of the sixth. So it's also, I think this goes back to like going and doing your research and like following the money. Like China has a huge, I mean, most of our pharmaceuticals are coming from China, which in my opinion is kind of scary when you think about it, because that could really dramatically affect the health of a lot of people if they wanted to fuck with something.
I was just watching.
And farmland. They own a lot of land here.
So they do, like they recently just bought a lot of land.
And part of me is wondering, like, what's the incentive here? Like, why the fuck is Bill Gates buying up all this farmland? And why is China buying up all this farmland? And why is it there's an incentive to say we should be taking care of the environment, we shouldn't be ranching, we shouldn't be growing things, unless there's like an incentive to start growing food and like controlling what we're eating? Or that China is realizing that it's got a ton of people, they're overpopulated, they have very little space to actually produce the resources that they need naturally. Do they see an opportunity to move into the United States knowing that the U.S. is kind of shifting, you know?
Two things. So one, we know the ruler of the seventh is in their eighth. And so this war could be more of an economic war too than anything. It could be a different type of war than just a physical military war. And then the second thing is, what do you think about the concept of government versus people? So like, let's say like there's this farmland that's being bought, right? And then individuals impede on the process or progress of this government, right? And now China, and this is a hypothetical situation, it probably won't happen like this, right? But like, let's say China is like, hey, people in your country are fucking up our investment. And now that sets up the American government and the Chinese government to fight against the people.
Well, the United States they are a corporation.
Right.
I can't remember what it goes back to, but there was something, I think it was either passed in the late 1800s or the early 1900s, like the U.S. is a corporation, right, who also in turn works with the Federal Reserve Bank, which by the way is not a federal organization. It's a private bank that the U.S. uses. Wow. So I'm wondering if part of the whole printing money and everything that's going on has just been basically to just keep things together, knowing that there has been a bubble that's coming since 2020 that they've been trying to kind of hold together, so that way there isn't something going on where it's affecting foreign banks, or that foreign banks are moving in and monopolizing on the fact that it's like crumbling. I mean, I think that it just goes to show you, I mean, if you're incorporated, if you got a business and if you're functioning under a business name, or you're an LLC or a corporation, you're protected. You can't be screwed. You can't be sued. Like, you can basically do whatever you want to do. Worst thing you're going to do is you're going to shut the company down. So I think the United States in that sense are pretty well protected if anybody wanted to come up against it. But like, this has been last year and this year, the year of like revolution, where we have seen, first it was the truckers, then it was people in uniform. Recently, now it's been the farmers, right? So like, what's going to be happening now in this third wave when we're seeing everything going through Leo? I think it's going to be the youth. I think it's going to be people who are self-employed. I think it's going to be artists who are realizing they're getting fucked, that, you know, if you have very little incentive to work for other people and not make a living, I mean, there's a reason why people aren't going back to work. I mean, if you go to some restaurants now, you go to some places, you hear from like automotive shops and other places, they're like, yeah, we can't get people to come back to work because there's no incentive. They're not getting paid well, or they're not getting paid on time, or there's little to no benefits. They're not getting raises. They don't have health care. Why are people going to go back to work? People have become either A, really comfortable not working, or B, they've realized that it makes sense for them to go and do other things and have side hustles rather than be getting screwed.
True that. Very true. And I love how this actually somehow oddly ties enough to Biden more than the country.
I think we're going to hear a lot during the Mars retrograde from,
that's true.
October to the new year, just watching that Mars retrograde go through the 7th house. And whether or not Biden is seen trying to like work and like negotiate with, China's prime minister, I think we're going to hear a lot about that. Mars is going to station on Xi Jinping's Jupiter, which is going to be conjunct, Biden's Saturn. I'm also watching Pluto come into a square with his moon. I mean, I have thought for a really long time with the United States chart that there is going to be a woman that's going to end up serving and coming into office.
That's not Kamala?
The koala bear?
Oh, so you think it's
Koala
gonna be her?
Harris?
Yeah. It would make sense if it was her. I'm going to just be real.
Saturn coming into conjunction.
Koala Harris.
I don't know. I think Blake told me that.
I love that.
He's like, the koala. We're going to have a koala bear in office. Koala Harris. Yeah, I think Saturn coming into conjunction with our Pallas Athena and our moon is going to be us finding out essentially next spring that we're getting ready to have our very first female president, which is fucking terrifying. Her chart's getting activated too. I didn't pull it, but
yeah.
I mean,
it won't be the first time the devil was our president. Shout out to Obama and other people. But, it's just, and I'm not even going to say the devil, Lucifer. But, what do you feel about the setup to the retrograde with Mars going into Gemini?
We're going to see I think the shadow is 8 degrees. And another thing, I've been talking about this for several years, so I really have to toot my own horn on this. When we were having the eclipses in 2020, in Gemini, I remember saying like, oh, there's this 20 degrees eclipse that's going to happen, that there would be a Mercury retrograde, there would be a Venus retrograde in the summer of 2020 over that degree. There would be a Mercury retrograde in 2021 over that degree, and also in 2022, which we had a Mercury retrograde in Gemini. Mm-hmm. And that the final third chapter would be the Mars retrograde. So it would be bringing up things that have been happening since 2020 during those eclipses. And North Node in Gemini is about 2 sides of every story, 2 phases, 2 options, 2 medias, 2 talking heads, whatever. So Mars going retrograde over that, which just so happens to be America's Mars degree, is going to be finally the truth coming out and not being manipulated with the squares to Neptune, that we have been at war for several years. That it is a war on information, that it is a war on knowledge.
A culture war.
So, also, my little buddy, God, what's his name? Can't think of his name. He's like one of my astrologer friends. I can't think of his name.
I bet you know his sign though.
Yeah, he's got like a Gemini, Taurus, Virgo combination.
Okay.
What is his name? It's gonna. My husband knows it.
Donnie
Lim. Yeah, Donnie Lim. He does like all the Venus star points. He was saying that Gemini is what rules monkeys.
No way.
Mars will go into Gemini, which is also the media. Okay, a lot of talk on the media. Mars can be about fevers, blisters, and sores. Mars will square Neptune, which is viruses. I think we're going to hear a lot in the fall about monkeypox.
And it's already starting.
And the square to Neptune is like misinformation about monkeypox.
So did you hear about the China or Japan monkey fiasco?
Oh, a bunch of monkeys were like seen like trying to like attack people and getting into homes. I mean, that to me, I don't know. I saw it.
Okay.
Makes me wonder, like, are they just releasing monkeys now?
The last time we heard about this happen was in India because someone killed a baby monkey, so it was retaliation. But this is the first time we're hearing.
They're just saying like straight up monkeys are just like banging on people's windows.
Right, which is interesting.
So the shadow will start around September 3rd, which is literally going to be on America's Uranus.
Yeah.
So basically, you start seeing the effects of the retrograde as early as September 3rd. But I'm very curious when Mars gets right around here, maybe with that opposition from the moon, September 30th, when the moon opposes Mars, and maybe we're going to be seeing that there's like some challenging information coming out about like relations. I mean, this is all going to be us realizing that who we thought were our allies are not our allies, especially foreign, because it's at a 21. And we're going to find out that, like, it's actually, like, our enemy.
I like that. It's like an unveiling. So, and just to kind of reiterate what you said, could this also mean like an ally turns into an enemy?
Mars retrograde in the 7th house. I mean, come on.
Oh, that's dramatic.
Right? Especially Mars being the lord of the 12th and Mars being the ruler of the 4th. I mean, finding out that maybe we're going to find out there's some people that are in government that are actually, like, working
Spies
and working against us.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah. That'd be tantalizing.
But that's Trump's, like, son. Yeah. That's also got connections to, the Chinese prime minister. I mean, something is happening. There's going to be, like, a flip-flop. And we're also going to hear the narrative change because we're going to see that there's this Mercury retrograde in Virgo opposed Neptune, and it's going to be square Mars. To me, this is also screaming, like, just be very careful about the health information that's being released in September going into October, because it's very clear that it's, like, falsified information, especially in regards to needles, Mars. Needles Mars? In the arm. Mars and Gemini.
And once again, like, this is all preparing for Saturn to go direct and go into Aquarius, where once again, if we think of 2020, 2021, where a lot of these things were activated with Saturn and instilled, the effect of that is Saturn Pisces. So we're going to see the long-term effects of everything that was done when Saturn was in Cap and Aqua. And it's so interesting. Like, the Neptune effect, I guess, was expecting things to happen earlier than it happening here. And it's been long enough to where I don't think people will realize it's not an ad hoc fallacy. It's directly correlated to what was done. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Be interesting to see what happens, just considering Mars is going to be like 5 months or so. It's going to be in Gemini, so it'll retrograde back, but by the time it's retrograding back, we're coming into Sag season. So we're starting to see that, like, we're working things out. Just kidding, no, we're not. Oh, surprise, we're going to war type of shit. It's going to be like, no, we're smoothing it out, and it's not. It's not. Yeah, miscommunication. It's definitely miscommunication at its finest, and it's going to station on America's Uranus in the 8th house, in the 6th house of health, in conjunction to Uranus, which is also going to be dealing with actual documents and transportation.
The CDC,
cars, vehicles.
The CDC is contradicting what states are doing too. The CDC is saying that monkeypox vaccines shouldn't even really be given unless there's like cause to, but you see state of emergency.
They have a ton of fucking leftover COVID vaccines that nobody's taking.
Wow.
Yeah. There's they ordered so many. There's tons of them. They were saying that they've put out centers and stuff for boosters and for kids, and people aren't showing up.
Holy shit.
So
I was under the impression more people are getting boosters, so there's less people getting boosters. There's less
people getting boosters. Yeah.
Word. That's
less people turning out for them. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. I mean, we'll do an episode on the Mars retrograde. I just thought it would be fun just to take a look at some of these charts and see what's kind of happening and what the deal is. What do you guys think? Do you think that this is some conspiracy?
The Great Reset?
I want to know what else is happening in the 2022 bingo card, because unless aliens fucking show up, I literally cannot think of anything else that could happen.
That's 2023, 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully
the hybrids will show themselves. That'll be cool. Choose your new rulers, us or them. Everyone will just be like, yo, please.
Anything is better. Lizard people.
Lizard people, that's hilarious. We can shapeshift, don't worry.
Will you guys let us know? Leave us comments below. What do you think about all this nonsense? What are you seeing in the charts? And if you guys like our podcast, please leave us a comment, leave us a thumbs up. Sharing is caring. Join us for our lives to be able to support these shows so we can keep giving more to you guys. We're getting pretty close to episode
100?
Yeah, I know, at least 80. So we're getting up there. 100 is somewhere in our future. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're kicking ass and taking names. We'll see you guys soon. Enjoy it. COVID?
I was about to say I don't have COVID.
You better not have fucking COVID.
I smoked weed earlier.
Okay. You get a pass for that.
Weird.
All right, guys. Enjoy your week. We'll see you soon. Take care.